there do I see my mother. Oh, there do I see my father. Oh, there do they call to me. 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 Oh, there do they call to me.
We live in a world where all things are finite. This includes creativity and the means to make completely unique creations. Hollywood is the first thing that comes to mind even as I say this, but we're not here to talk about that. This is about video games. But video games are no exception to this rule. As the industry continues to grow and there are more game releases than ever, it becomes increasingly difficult to create something truly unique, and the result is to just keep making more of the same because, well, sometimes more of the same is what sells. At least until something like this rolls around. I present to you God of War. But not the God of War you know from the mid-PS2 generation. This is a complete reboot and overhaul of the franchise. God of War is a unique entity in that it manages to take the parts of its predecessor that were lacking and improve upon them in ways that most reboots fall flat when undertaking. It turns the all-out vengeful bloodlust foundation into something a bit more relatable to the average person. Simply put, it's a God of War that's all buttoned up and ready to take on that important interview, so to speak. Yet with this evolution into maturity, it somehow manages to acknowledge its past without completely belittling it or writing it off as what most narratives equate to a fever dream. It's a game about loss, facing your demons, and parenthood. The game's story of Kratos and his son Atreus is an almost mirror image of the developers behind it, and the lessons they've learned while growing up, maturing, and starting families of their own. All the while fulfilling the sense of discovery and wonder while exploring the world and going on this journey that all starts with a simple promise and a mountaintop. God of War opens with Kratos chopping down trees with his son for a pyre to cremate his now deceased wife. Right out of the gate, I was under the impression that this was a newly changed Kratos. His demeanor was calm, yet cold as he talks to his son in a very distant manner.
Get in the boat, boy.
But within that same scene, you see the straps come undone around his wrists, revealing the scars where the chains from the Blades of Chaos had left him from the previous trilogy. Answering the question of whether or not this truly was the same Kratos that I grew up with. And he quickly wraps them back up to hide the scars from his son, who is oblivious to his past life. It was clear to me that Kratos had started life anew in a new land after the destruction he caused at Olympus just to kill Zeus. As someone that has played all of the God of War games up to this point, this scene alone was enough to hook me into this new world and adventure. And the characters you meet along the way that help you on this adventure are the clear highlights of the show.
I will just... Oh. 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 Oh, is that dried blood? Oh.
But that's just the foundation for the game's narrative. What about what some would call the most contentious and controversial part of the game, especially leading up to release? That's right, I'm talking about the gameplay. Ever since the game's reveal, it sparked a great debate in the gaming community about the stark change in gameplay. Specifically the move from the patented Blades of Chaos / Exile to a singular throwable axe, and the move to a more confined behind-the-back camera as opposed to fixed camera angles showing the entire area around the character. As someone that found enjoyment in the combat from the previous games, I'll be the first to say that it was not as in-depth or strategic as everyone wanted to think it was. I found myself being put on my toes a bit more this time around, knowing when to throw the axe at enemies and when to call it back. This isn't a game where button mashing will carry you through. You have to think about what methods and abilities work best when tackling crowds of enemies. I was forced to use everything at my disposal in tense situations, while also knowing when to have Atreus distract foes to avoid being overwhelmed. This is no longer a game about Kratos being a god. It's a game where you are vulnerable and can easily be taken down if you're not careful. That being said, the violent nature of the franchise is still intact, with Kratos chopping enemies in half, smashing them with their own weapons, and ripping them apart with his bare hands. There's just something much more visceral about Kratos chopping his axe into a wolf's head and then slinging its limp body out of his way. It spurred a wincing reaction out of me even after the 10th time seeing it. It's brutal and effective. The light puzzle-solving elements from the previous games remain intact, and with a new wrinkle to them that includes using your son's abilities, which, like Kratos, he gains more of over the course of the game's story. While both Kratos and Atreus are two different entities, the game never makes it feel like busy work in forcing you to control both of them, but instead giving you the options of having Atreus back you up when things get a little out of control. It never felt tacked on or lacking, but instead opened up options for unique combos with Atreus opening enemies up for some of the most brutal attacks from Kratos. It rewards experimentation, which is important in any character action game, and with the ability to customize your playstyle with the game's RPG mechanics and skill trees, I found myself losing quite a few hours just trying to figure out exactly the kind of warriors I wanted my father and son duo to be. Couple this with the ability to upgrade and customize the axe with talismans that offer magic abilities in combat, upgrades to armor based on your playstyle, and sockets that further increase the power of said armor and weapons, and you start to see just how much time you can sink into finding the perfect build for the game's most difficult challenges.
Come on then.
You want me to hit you?
I want you to try.
Ow! What are you...
Try again.
Why are you doing that?
Too slow. Try again.
Cut it out!
Weak. Again. Again.
Stop it!
Again.
Overall, God of War is an incredible experience that I would recommend to any fan of the previous games and fans of character action games in general. It's definitive proof that the minds behind the franchise truly understand what makes it great, and using that knowledge to change and evolve it into something that can easily stand up to modern gaming sensibilities. There was plenty of potential to completely ruin the franchise with this reboot, but the team at Sony Santa Monica has opened the doorway to a new adventure with the same character that many have grown attached to over the years, without completely throwing away who he was before. It's something that many would claim to be an insurmountable task, and yet, in this case, it has been done with plenty of polish and grace. This evolution of one of my favorite video game series is what has cemented it on my list of favorite games of the year.